A 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's little time.
Hi, I'm Neil McCormick, and you're watching Needle Time, where I'm very pleased to have a guest, a man who was a huge part of my growing up. I could quote, maybe it's because I'm an Irishman that I like Dublin best, from your first album, Gilbert O'Sullivan, himself. And here we have Gilbert O'Sullivan himself.
And it's good to be with you, Neil.
So, where did music start for you? Because you were pretty young when you first hit it in the 70s. So where does it begin?
It begins in Swindon. I mean, I left Ireland when I was 7. My father was a butcher. Grass was greener in England. So the family moved over there. The radio is the key in those early days, listening to Luxembourg. A little transistor radio in the bedroom, singing songs. And that was the thing that always got to me. I could always remember things through songs.
So what kind of music would you be listening to?
Pop music. Luxembourg was great for getting American records. You could hear everything on Radio Luxembourg, not so much on the light program. Right. There was elements of popular music. But it's like today, when I listen to CDs of older songs, my favorite era is the 50s. That's what I kind of relate to. So it's very simple music melodically, and it's quite banal lyrically. But the lyrics never really bothered me that much. It was always the melody I was going for. So that's how that started. And it was then you had Cliff and the Shadows coming through, but we didn't really feel we wanted to be in a band with the Cliff and the Shadows or want to be a singer. But then when the Beatles arrived, suddenly it opened up a door for people like ourselves to feel that we could be in a band. We could maybe even write songs because there was no GCEs attached to what they were writing. One felt that to be a songwriter you needed to have a degree or something. But they broke all those barriers down. Mm. And so that's how we then get into groups. So your love of music is continuing through the radio and through television. And then you're in a band. I'm a drummer in a band, in a local band, my old school band.
While you're in school?
Yeah, while I'm in school. And then develop into a sort of boys' club band called the Prefects. And then that got a little bigger. Then I joined a band called Rick's Blues. The leader of that ended up forming Supertramp. That's Rick Davis. So the two of us, we could have gone professional because it was getting more serious as time went by. We were a really good band, mostly through his influence. And we did some of my songs. I was gradually starting to write songs through this just love of hearing popular music. Popular music is the key to everything I do. I always say to myself, or say to people who ask me, I have no sort of intellectual level about what I write. I'm a pop songwriter. I really like that. I don't want to be anything other. I like that 3-minute scenario of coming up with a good melody in a verse and an interesting melody in a middle section. That for me is what makes me sit at a desk even today for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, if necessary, to come up with what I hope are good songs.
Are you self-taught on the piano? I've watched you play, and you've certainly in the early days, you're quite unusual playing.
It's the drumming. Right. It's if you're sitting on your own in a garden shed with a piano, so you keep the rhythm. So the left hand is like the hi-hat, and as a drummer, it was quite easy for me to do that. And that's no. I had my mother, sent me to piano lessons. She wanted all her children to have piano lessons. Why? Because it's that Irish thing about if you can play the piano, you can get in the pub and earn a few bob by playing all the hits of the day. So that there was some element of logic behind that. So I had the formal lessons, but I didn't really. The piano teacher called me out because she got me to play something, and I played it by ear. And so she said, "You're not reading it." So that she realized that it was a waste of time. So that stopped. But the love of sitting at a piano trying to write songs just continued and grew and grew.
What do you get sitting at the piano? And is it the same now? Do you find the melodies? Are the melodies in your head? Are you finding them following?
Well, it's the same principle now as it was when I started 40 odd years ago. Just sitting there, just playing. I mean, I've always said that if you spend 8 hours doing it and you don't come up with a melody, it's not a waste of time because you've practiced. So your fingers are getting more nimble. You just work at it. The key is you're able to write a melody through the love of melodies that you hear. That's how we as non-professional writers, Lennon and McCartney, Ray Davis, you name it, all these people don't read music. So we just do it through a love of music. There's something special about the link we have as opposed to, say, a lot of people that you'll hear writers say. There's an interesting story of the guy who wrote Angel of the Morning. I mean, he heard a Stones track called, I think, a Rolling Stones track. He loved it so much that he ended up writing Angel of the Morning, and you would never associate Angel of the Morning with the Rolling Stones track. But he loved that so much, he was able to translate that love of that track into a new melody that he wrote. And that's happened to me. I've been inspired by tracks that I've heard I love more than like. And that's inspired me when I've sat down the next day or the next week to try and come up with a melody. It's a magical process.
At what point did you kind of recognize that you had a facility for this?
Well, because when I was in the Boys Club band, I wrote a song called Come On Home, which is a lovely song. So we performed that. So I was starting to develop my songwriting. My songwriting came through love of Lennon and McCartney to start with, and my vocal was inspired by Dylan, Freewheeling Bob Dylan. So those were the two catalysts for me. I didn't think I had a great voice. And if you listen to my early demos, I'm trying to sing like Bob Dylan. So I sound like a man of about 50. But I kind of liked that, because then I created this image. So I had this sort of image, and I sounded really old. And I was only 18, 20. So I knew I was capable of coming up with good songs. And so what happened was that mid-60s, 66, I sent songs to publishers up in London, record companies actually. And you'd hear nothing. So I would take a day trip up to London, storm into the office and demand my tape. And I'd wait until they found it. And then I would, my little message tape with my four demos on it. So I was really I had a healthy arrogance about what I think I could achieve. And my mother said to me, you got to leave the house, you got to get out and get up. So I came to London in 67 and knocked on doors, and as you do. And gradually I worked at CNA's as a temporary salesman. So I had a piano in the flat, so I was able to continue my writing, coming up with ideas. This guy at CNA's landed a recording contract, so I asked him, we were both temp salesmen, if he could take my little message tape with my 4 songs on it. And he took it in, the publisher. They really liked it, offered me a deal, not a recording contract. So I insisted that they couldn't have my publishing if I didn't get a recording contract. So that was CBS. So they gave me a single a year. So that was a brilliant start. So that was the beginning. So magical. So you learn that in 67, 68, go through different record companies, major, minor, but Phil Solomon's. And then eventually I realized that I needed a managerial person to take what I had created, this image. I had this Chaplin jacket, cap and boots, creating this character called Gilbert. Nobody liked it.
No.
Nobody liked it.
Well, why did you stick with it?
Well, because it was nothing to do with the serious business of writing songs. It was to do with the image. The Beatles are catalysts for image as well as songwriting, because they looked different. They had Beatle haircuts, Beatle jackets. That really made a strong impression on me.
But they were trying to look cool.
Yeah, but by mid-60s, when I decided that I wanted to create this character, it was impossible to look different and look good. Long hair was here to stay, no question about that. Image was a dirty word. So there was no way I could do anything that could look good. I had to do the opposite. So cutting all my hair off in a pudding basin haircut, which today looks very fashionable.
Yeah, it does. It looks.
But in those days, it looked like I'd escaped from home or something. And so I knew I could do something. It wouldn't look different. It would be different, but it wouldn't necessarily be something which was cool. And but I was determined. I mean, everybody who turned me down, CBS didn't like it. Gordon Mills, which is great when you think about it, with Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck, he didn't like it, but he knew that there was something in the songs that could be the reason I would be successful. So he accepted the image. He said, "Oh, you want to do that? Do it." Nobody liked it, but the more people disliked it, the more determined I was to use it. And interestingly enough, when I look back now at pictures of that period, and I see the Chaplin jacket, and I see the cap and the boots and the pudding basin haircut and stuff, it looks cool now. And if I'd have looked back to see pictures of long hair and Cuban heel boots and flared trousers, I would be cringing. So there's a nice thing about having stuck to my guns, that when I look back on that image, I'm really kind of proud of it.
Were you playing live at this?
No, I couldn't do that.
Why not?
Well, because I didn't come from a background of getting out on the road. I mean, I was in bands as a drummer, and we did perform here and there. But no, as a solo artist, it was just a question of putting out a record, getting the odd television show. John Peel had me on his show. So I do the odd broadcast, did a Granada TV in the cap and boots and stuff, and worked it that way. In fact, if you think about it, with himself, when the first album took off, I had offers to go all around the world. And another nice thing about Gordon Mills was that if he'd have been a new manager, he would have said, right, the offers are from New Zealand, the offers from Australia, the offers from America, nothing rhymed as big time around the world, we need to go. And then you would get caught in that second album syndrome. First album syndrome, you got your life to write it. Second album, if you're on the road for 12 months, traveling the world, seeing all these fantastic places, where do you write the songs? Where are the songs for that second album? So Gordon was really good. He realized that the strength that in me was the songwriting. So I would do TV between 70 and 72. And I would do interviews and stuff. But I was at home all the time, continuing to develop my songwriting.
I know how you've dreamt about being walked down the aisle, but think of the money we'll save and you'll see it's worthwhile. It won't please our mums and dads, but they don't even know. Besides, if they did, what's the bet? They wouldn't even go. You and me are all that matters, disregard the rest. Trust your soon-to-be old man, he knows what is best. Very shortly now there's gonna be an answer from you, then one from me. That's matrimony. Oh, I'm truly grateful for the little things in life that have made me so glad. Every other hour that I spend with you is not in the least bit sad. Quite the opposite, in fact, and if you don't believe me, here's the proof. Ask me if I, and I'll say I do.
Hi, I'm Neil McCormick and you're watching Needle Time with my guest, Gilbert O'Sullivan himself. Let's talk about that album himself. I've got to say it was a big album in my household. My dad had it. We listened to it pretty incessantly, that and Elton John. And I played it the other day preparing for this interview and realised that I could sing every song from top to bottom.
Better than me, maybe?
Maybe not, maybe, but I could sing. There's something about the way the words just chime and flow. There's some strands of stuff going on that album, which I think is interesting, which maybe the strands that have remained in your career, but they're all there. One is there's quite a lot of surreal wordplay and just fun that you're having. Build yourself an atomic bomb. And then there's those social observation, very keen social observations, which are like that kind of kitchen sink milieu. Songs like Permissive Twit and Matrimony are like little vignettes of English life.
Absolutely.
The tea drinking has already started to appear, and then there are slightly more deeper and poetic songs, of which the one that kind of broke through first in such a massive way and remains, a classic song was Nothing Rhymed. Talk to me about Nothing Rhymed. Where did that song come out of?
It just came out of, when Gordon Mills took me on, he only really heard the songs that I had on message tapes and stuff, or the few demos I had with my publishing company. So he never heard, I hadn't written Nothing Rhymed when he took me on. But when I sent him my tape, then I went to meet him. He wanted to meet me. He needed to see that I could write more than what was on the tape. And so I went to his home in Weybridge, and it was a magical palace. It was unbelievable to see what he had. And I played him a few more songs, and then that convinced him that he would sign me, despite not liking the image. And then we would go into the studio to do a few recordings. All of himself was recorded in 3-hour sessions. In those days, most artists, 3-hour session, A-side and a B-side, 2 hours on the A-side, 1 hour on the B-side, and that's it. That's how it was in those days. Time was precious, it's expensive, and so that's how we went in to do Nothing Rhymed. Nothing Rhymed was done with Independent Air. I think it was 2 tracks we did Nothing Rhymed with what Herbie Flowers on bass, who's famous for Walk on the Wild Side. So he did the boom. He always tells me that. So, you know, and that was what we recorded, and that's how Nothing Rhyme came about.
Yeah, but
So
how did you write it? I mean, it's a fairly potent series of thoughts. It suggests somebody looking at the world and wondering how this world makes sense that they're in. Was it an important song for you to write?
Yeah, they're all important to me. Every song I write is important to me. I'm the only person who hears it in the process when it's been made. I wouldn't say you as a friend of mine, come and listen, what do you think of this? I'm the one that decides if it's good. I'm the one that decides I'll finish it. When it's finished, other people can hear it. But I'm not one of those kind of people that need other people to tell me. So Nothing Rhyme was just another song. It wouldn't necessarily be that commercial. And if you take the logical step beyond that, when it was released with Dave Edmunds' I Hear You Knocking on the MAM label, within 2 weeks I Hear You Knocking was number one. Nothing Rhymed had not appeared. DJs were beginning to say, this is interesting, like the lyrics as you talk about and stuff. So it took about 5 weeks to break. You would never get that today. It couldn't happen today. It would be dismissed. But in those days, people took time to hear tracks that weren't necessarily that commercial. So you wouldn't view it as a commercial song. But it was, for me, a good song. But then I move on to the next song.
And if while in the course of my duty I perform an unfortunate tape, would you punish me so unbelievably so? Never again will I make that mistake. This feeling inside me could never deny me the right to be wrong if I choose. And this pleasure I get from, say, winning a bet is to lose. When I'm drinking my Bonaparte shandy, eating more than enough apple pies, will I glance at my screen and see real human beings starved to death right in front of my eyes? Nothing old, nothing new, nothing ventured, nothing gained, nothing stillborn or lost, nothing further than proof, nothing wilder than you, nothing older than time, nothing sweeter than wine, nothing physically, recklessly, hopelessly blind, nothing I couldn't say, nothing why, 'cause today, nothing rhymes.
Do you remember the impulses that
No.
made you write it? No?
It's just a song, Neil, a good song. I mean, it's very important, this, as a songwriter, not to feel that when you write something, it's special. You know, I can go on forward to when Alone Again was recorded with Out of the Question, which came from the second. And nobody said at the end of the session, Alone Again is going to be number one in America and it's going to change your life around the world. People said, Out of the Question is more commercial. I always had that view. It's a good song. I work hard at it. I never dismiss the work that goes into songwriting. It's hard work. And if I'm happy with it, then I'll put it forward, because I have no control over who will say this should be released, this should go on. I just write the songs. And when you mentioned to start, as you started this interview, to say that you like my lyrics because of the play on words, the way I use words, and involving serious issues, which kind of, when I say to people, if you want to know the lyrics I write today, you see it in the newspapers. I still write that kind of thing. I go into Middle East where I talk about social issues, things that are going on in the world. And I like wordplay. I still have that thing. I have a good sense of humor, so I like playing with words. I like coming up with, it's the Milligan, it's the Spike Milligan thing. I loved Milligan's poetry when I was at art school. Magical stuff. So very influenced by him as a lyricist. So there's a sort of link that the comedy, comic humor, how you can use a word, take the real meaning and use it in a different way. I love things like that. And that's part of why I enjoy the songwriting process from those days of Nothing Rhyming.
So is each song a kind of self-contained world? I mean, I'm thinking about, let's say Alone Again, naturally, you brought up. Now, that may be the saddest song ever written, although sometimes I think it pushes the tragedy so far that it's almost verging on the comical. Well, it's not, but you know, it's suicidal, there's death, it's like, how miserable can you be? Are you sitting down and thinking, well, this character's miserable. How miserable can he be? What's
No,
going on in that moment?
I'm well into the story. I'm in that person who has been let down in the church, contemplating suicide. I'm into that. There's nothing humorous about it. I mean, I'm really seriously taking that song very seriously, and I'll work at it. All the extra verses that are not used, I'll get it till I get it right. Go into the middle section, what I talk about. There are more people in the world who can, so I go into all kinds of, which I think are important to get out of my head that I'm into. It may have taken me a long time to start it. I had the melody, as always. The melody usually dictates how the words will be. So no, but that's it with me. I mean, people say to me, could you tell us about this song? And I always feel it's a dangerous thing. If you can talk about it, why write it is almost what you would be saying. Because there's this fear factor. I'll give you another interesting thing with lyrics is, we all love How Long by Ace, the band. The How Long Has This Been Going On, right? Mm-hmm. Written by the what's his name?
Paul Carrack.
Paul Carrack, right? Great song, okay? He went on air and gave an interview where he talked about what it was about. Now, what you and I might think How Long is about, it's about his girlfriend or his wife's having an affair with somebody. It's a kind of sad song. How long has this been going? It was about the bass player leaving the band, for God's sake.
Right.
I mean,
you don't want to break the spell.
So the key is that, when I heard Neil Diamond talk about when he recorded Alone Again, somebody asked him, why did you do this song? And he said it was a young person who wrote it, and it really interested me to think somebody that age could write about something like this. So I observe that, but I don't get into the area. I like to feel that what you got out of it, what you liked about it, is important to you. I don't want to spoil that.
To think that only yesterday I was cheerful, bright and gay, looking forward to what wouldn't do the role I was about to play. But as if to knock me down, reality came around, and without so much as a mere touch, cut me into little pieces, leaving me to doubt. Talk about God in His mercy, if He really does exist, why did He desert me in my hour of need? I truly am indeed alone again, naturally. It seems to me that there are more hearts broken in the world that can't be mended, left unattended. What do we do? What do we do?
People would say with Alone Again, you must have experienced that to write about it. And I say, no, you don't have to experience it. You just have to have a good understanding of that kind of situation to talk about something that's quite serious.
There was a lot of, I think of songs like We Will and Matrimony and Permissive Twit that are very set in the kitchen sink, they're set in the house. Mm-hmm. You can feel the family beyond and behind the song. Mm-hmm. So does this reflect your family, your street, your milieu?
We Will does. We Will is very much. I think the original title of that was I think my mother's name was in it, my mum or something. It was going to be. I've looked at the lyrics of that. Yeah, it's a very Catholic song. It's a very Irish family song. Go up the stairs, leave the landing light. That's what happened in our house. So that's the observing as a youngster. So that comes into play. I mean, I do pick up on that, which is a nice thing. We Will is a really good song. So I'm really proud of that song, and it's one of the kind of highlights for us on stage. Lovely middle section. Quite proud of that. I do like veering off and coming back.
I'm Neil McCormick, and you're watching Needle Time with my guest, Gilbert O'Sullivan. So you had a massive pop success in the early 70s. Number one singles on both sides of the Atlantic. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, why not?
Did you enjoy the fame?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, my feet were firmly on the ground because I didn't tour that often. I mean, as I said, going back to what I said earlier about needing to write, throughout all my success, the key was always to stay at home writing. And in the very beginning of that success, if I had a girlfriend and I thought it was getting a little bit too, I would say it's interfering with the work. So I was very much like that, slightly early on disciplined to the extent that I didn't want anything to interfere with my writing. I knew what I needed to do to keep the images thing going, because I was changing. I changed from the Chapman Jag, which I had for 3 years before, Nothing Right. So then I moved into the G Sweater thing. I kind of liked that. Saw that in the Buster Keaton movie. That was fun. So I looked upon that as just a light-hearted thing to do. So the writing was always there, and the success was great. I had no problem with it.
I'm just, there's aspects of you that come across quite a loner in some way, a little bit shy in some ways. But you also said that it was important to you as a writer to, sit in a station and just watch people going by. Whereas when your fame kind of cuts the observational.
Yeah, it's more difficult. But you stick a hat on and glasses with a false moustache, not a problem. No, but it's the Bernie Taupin thing. I mean, people talk about Elton and stuff. We all love Elton and stuff, and he writes the melodies, not the words. And I often think, wow, if I only wrote the music, I could spend more time partying and doing lots of things. And Bernie's up there in the mountain peaks, hidden away, writing the lyrics. If you write a book, you lock yourself away. So that's always there. That's part of what you need to do. You need to be cut off. I'm very happy with my family, very proud of my family, my wife and the daughters. But I have my music room, which is way at the top of the house. That's where I disappear for 8 hours, 5 days, 4 weeks, months on end to write. I can't be disturbed for that. The weekend I'll relax and do other things. So that's very important. So that hermit-like thing, reclusive thing, comes into play in that kind of scenario.
Claire, the moment I met you, I swear, I felt as if something somewhere had happened to me, which I couldn't see. And then, the moment I met you again, I knew in my heart that we were friends. It had to be so, it couldn't be no. But try as hard as I might do, I don't know why, that you get to me in a way I can describe. Words mean so little when you look up and smile. I don't care what people say, to me you're more than a child. Oh Claire, 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 if ever a moment so rare was captured for all to compare, that moment is you in all that you do. But why, in spite of our age difference, do I cry? Each time I leave you, I feel I could die. And nothing means more to me than hearing you say, I'm going to marry you, will you marry me, Uncle Ray? Oh Claire, Claire. I've told you before, don't you dare get back into bed. Can't you see that it's late? No, you can't have a drink. Oh, all right then, but wait just a bit, while I, in an effort to babysit, catch up my breath, what there is left of it. You can be murdered at this hour of the day, but in the morning this hour will seem a lifetime away. Oh Claire, Claire.
You had a massive hit with the song Claire, which was written about Gordon Mills, your manager's daughter who you used to babysit. You had a terrible falling out and lawsuits with Gordon Mills, which we don't need to go into all that because the story's been told, but you had been underpaid.
No, it was nothing to do with that.
So
it's important.
Okay, tell me.
Well, the point was that in 1969, when Gordon took me on, my publisher, who had signed me in '67, April Music, had a new head of the company, Deke Arlen, and Deke is still around. He manages many people. He's well known in the business, and so Deke called me up to his office and said, "Look, Ray, we're giving writers their own companies now. It's a new phenomenon. You get the way it works is that 50% of the £100 that's earned goes to the writer. We don't touch that. But the other 50% goes to the publisher. What we're doing is we're giving writers their own companies where we'll give them half of the publisher's share. So they, in effect, can have their name on a little publishing company, and they can have, in effect, 75%. I thought that was great. So I then go to Gordon and say, Gordon, you're going to manage me. Deke told me, and he realised that there were still 2 more years to go with April Music, so he couldn't get my songs 100%. I said to Gordon, look, Gordon, Deke said to me I could have my own company. And Gordon said then, in 1969, he said, you're not going to get it now. If you're successful, you'll get it. So 72, I asked Gordon about the publishing company. 73, I was asking about it. 74, Gordon kept saying, don't worry, Deke, they'll take care of it. It's going to be done. 75, still hadn't been done. 76, still hadn't been done. I just occasionally say, any news on my publishing company? I wasn't interested in money. I didn't worry about those kind of things. Yes, I had a nice house and stuff, but I'm not that materialistic. I never saw songwriting as a way to make money. I saw songwriting as a way to be successful. So when we fell out and we shook hands and I went to his house, because it was really difficult for me to do this after all he'd done for me. I was very nervous, shaking like a leaf when I went up to his house, because he had given me an ultimatum. If I don't produce your records, because he produced my records as well as managed me, and I wanted to work with other producers. I said, Rod Stewart with Atlantic Crossing, those producers, could I not work with them? And he said, no, if I don't produce your records, that's it. And I said, but you'll still manage me. It would be good for all of us to do this, mid-70s. He said, no. So I went away, chewed on it, I came out, I said, Gordon, no, I want to work with other people. And he said, so I said, well, all right. He said, then that's it. So I said, can we shake hands on it? And then as I was leaving, I said, my publishing company, will I get my interest in my publishing company? He said, yeah, go in to Bill, his right-hand man, on Monday. This was a Friday of the weekend. And they'll sort it out for you. Monday, I walk into his office, go up to the managing director's office, big desk there. I said, right, Bill, you realise that he knew that we'd broken up. Gordon had told him and stuff. And I said, Gordon said, I could see you about getting the interest in my publishing company. He told me to F off. That's basically what happened. So I walk out the door, I don't know anybody, all the lawyers, all the accountants, everything to do with my life is in that building. So the only person I knew was Harold Davison's son, Gary Davison. So I rang Gary and said, Gary, they didn't give me what I promised. I'm really not. So I said, can you help me get a lawyer? So he put me in a company that his father worked with, Amherst, Brown, Martin and Nicholson. And that was it. So that's all I wanted, was to get that interest in my songs. But when you go into it, lawyers, and they're building a case, things come out and a whole can of worms emerges. I wasn't interested. I wasn't looking to get back my masters. I wasn't looking to get back all my publishing. All I wanted was what he promised me. So that's the story.
Right.
But the tabloid view is what took place.
The repercussion was many. What your career was kind of derailed for a long
Of
time.
course.
At the end of which you won substantial payments and you got your masters and you got a large amount of money. But you've fallen out with this family who were very important to you. And so I know you must have been asked this a lot, but I've seen Claire, the adult Claire, on TV talking about you very warmly. Have you had any contact?
Sure, we've been in touch. And what started it off was, of course, when it all broke up with Gordon and stuff, obviously his family were very much on his side. I was very close to his wife, Jo. And she is to me, and I got back with her in recent years. In fact, the new album is dedicated to her because she died just 2 months ago. So they were deeply upset, and Claire, of course, and Beverly and Tracy, their children, naturally sided with their father. I was the terrible one. His mother, who I was very close to, Lorna, I was the demon. And so that was difficult. It took years for that to. I never thought that it would ever clear up and that we could become friends. But I heard Claire give a radio interview in the 80s, where she talked very nicely. And that made me get in touch with her, because she said some nice things, and I thought, well, there's no animosity there. She's very proud of the song. So that's when we started to get in touch again. And in recent years, we get together, we have lunches, and we meet up, and she has 2 children. She's fairly happy in her life. And to this day, I'll be meeting her. They all came to the concerts 18 months ago when we were touring. Her son, all her family came, Joe came, all the children and the grandchildren. Magical time. So that's great that ended up that way, through what was a horrible experience for everyone.
Oh, at the very moment you arrive, I stop living and I start to feel alive. You have the power taken over me, led me what you like. Oh, at the very moment you arrive. Oh, I suspect that I will pinch myself to find that it really isn't true. It really can't be you walking up the garden drive at the very moment you arrive. Although it's been said well over 1,000 times, there's 1,000 more. Will you still be mine forever and evermore?
Hi, I'm Neil McCormick. You're watching Needle Time with my guest Gilbert O'Sullivan. I want to move on to your new album, but just before, I just want to pick up on one thing. So we were talking about your legal battles, and you've become a legal precedent.
Yeah.
Because the O'Sullivan case is now a basic.
Well, two cases actually. The O'Sullivan case with my manager and the record company in those days, in the 70s, is what's used now for other artists that get into that kind of situation. So it can actually be helpful. The other ones, of course, is the sampling case. We had the first sampling case that went to court. A guy called Bismarcky, who was the Jay-Z of his day, sampled Alone Again, the intro, and didn't get permission. So I said, I need to hear it. When I heard it, I didn't like it, so we said he couldn't do it. They still put it out. I had to go to America to sue him. I was the one that had to go into court to defend the action, even though we knew that he had blatantly done it. I had to spend a fortune with lawyers before it was settled in court. But having got on the stand to begin, and Bismarck didn't even turn up in court, but they were supported by Warner Brothers, was the record company behind him. So when the judge said, in my case, he said, if you don't withdraw this record in the next 48 hours, every Warner Brothers record that's coming out for this Christmas period will be stopped. So by the time we walked back to the office, it had all been resolved and settled. But I had to go through all that. So that's an interesting thing because, again, from a sampling point of view, that there is a legal precedent set means that it's helpful to people who want to sample or whose work has been sampled.
But you don't want to be known as a legal precedent because songwriting is your thing. You're still writing. You're still touring. Probably a bit more maybe than you would in your heyday. But you still write just as much. I know you've got a new album coming out, so let's talk about that. What's it going to be called?
Well, the album's called Latin Allergy, which is based on my love of Peggy Lee's album. Peggy Lee released 2 albums in 1960 called Latin Allergy and Ole Allergy. I love those. The reason I like Peggy Lee is because I consider her and Ella Fitzgerald to be the greatest female interpreters of song. Sinatra's the greatest male interpreter. And when you're a young songwriter, to learn your craft, like if you're an art student, you study the great painters from the classics, to study songwriters. So the great interpreters of songs, the great songs of the early 20th century, Cole Porter, Rodgers and Hart, Roger and Hammerstein, Jerome Kern, those are the people that I learned from. And the people who interpreted their songs are the people I listened to. So Peggy was one of those. And so I've always wanted to do a Latin-influenced album because I feel that if you've made a lot of albums, the danger is that what you mustn't do is every 2 years you do an album, that you use the same lineup. It's you as the songwriter. You can't change that. It's you as the singer. But if you just go in and record it the way you recorded the previous one, in a way people might feel, well, I've got everything. Do I need the 23rd of the same thing? So it's very important to do something a little different. So for example, the last album I recorded in Nashville, so that was good. So this one now I wanted to do what I've had for years at the back of my mind, is to do this Latin. 12 pop songs, very happy with the songs, I'm proud of the lyrics, I worked hard on it. And then I go to Madrid with Peter Walsh, who produced, he produced a Scott Walker and Simple Minds in the past. And it was magical. And so that was the great thing. We spent 2 weeks in Madrid recording the tracks. It has that lovely Latin flavour. And as a nice tribute to Peggy, as opposed to Latin Allergy, it's Latin Allergy. And Peggy's cover on the album in 60 had her in the middle with 2 male matadors either side of her in their full garb, we have me in the middle with two female matadors. So we've reproduced the cover. So there's something really nice about the whole thing.
Okay. So is the subject matter of the songs, does it differ much from the subject matter of, let's say, that first album? In what way does the Gilbert Sullivan of...
Well, the key, the first key is that melodically it needs to be there. There's a danger of people like ourselves who've been around a long time that you lose it melodically. Paul Simon's never lost it lyrically. And I think if you have a lyrical ability, it's in you from birth. Melodic in you comes from your love of music. When George Harrison said that he can't stand what he heard on the radio in the 80s and 90s, when he was starting out, he loved what he heard on the radio because that's all he had. So it's very important that you're influenced by what's going on today. You mustn't dismiss what's going on today if you want to write melodies. It's important to keep in touch with what's going on. You need that. If you lose that interest, then you're not going to be melodically. As I say, lyrically, I can hear a new Paul Simon album. I don't get a lot out of it melodically, but I get an awful lot out of it lyrically. Randy Newman, I buy all Randy's stuff. Lyrically, he's as good as he's ever been. But melodically, no. And he's probably not that bothered by that. With me, it's essential that I like to feel that if there's a good melody on Himself in 70, there's an equally good melody on Latin Elegy. So that's that side of it. And then the lyrical side is, back to what you said, I cover everything. I go into all areas on this album. I go into vegetarianism, I go into gun law. I cover all kinds of things as well as love songs. I mean, what I love about, we do a song called Love I You. I mean, it's that thing when you sit at a desk with the melody and you say, right, it's a love song. How can I make I Love You that little bit different? So as a lyricist, that's a fascinating prospect. So what can I do? So I end up doing a song, I you love you, you I love I you. So that's the way around that. So that brings a smile to my face, or a smile to yours. But me as a writer doing that is interesting. So all those kind of aspects of my lyrical ability, I like to feel are still there as strong as ever, with some hopefully good melodies.
And does it feature tea, which I've noticed does pop up on your album a lot?
Yeah, the last album had Where Would We Be Without Tea?
Indeed it did, but a lot of your albums, there's a little brew going on somewhere in the song.
Well, that the fact that I've written a song about it kind of sums that up properly, I think, in many ways. But like a camel without a hump, rubbish without a dump, like a ceiling without a floor, carbon footprints all over the door, like a baby without a pram, Birmingham without its ham. Where would we be without tea? So it's the nice thing. We have a song on here called Hablando del Rey, which is interesting because we have a duet called I Guess I'll Always Love You. Because of my love of Latin music, apart from the Peggy Lee thing, my love of Latin goes back to Sergio Mendes and Astrid Gilberto, the Brazilian. Okay. And we had thought, when we put the album to begin with, talked about it. In fact, Steve here from my record company, we talked about going to Brazil possibly, or using Brazilian musicians. But that didn't kind of work out the way we wanted to. So that's why we ended up, when Peter Walsh came on board, because of his links with Spanish musicians, we decided to go that route, and it's worked out brilliantly. So we have a nice duet with a girl singer who sings her verse in Spanish. So we have a Spanish version of it. And then we have a track called Hablando del Rey de Roma, which is like the Sergio Mendes thing. So that's kind of interesting. I've not done that before. And that fits in, that's almost like a Sergio Mendes track. And, it's in English, it's speaking of the King of Rome. So it's, I'm really very enthusiastic and upbeat about, having worked so hard on it. I mean, for me, the success of what I've done now, Neil, is just to get the thing done and get it out there. That's what I have control over. Who would be interested in it? Who would like it? Who might want to buy it? I can't cover that, I'm afraid. But I hope people like that.
You've spoken about working and going into your room 5 days a week. Mm. I mean, is that, do you have like a 9 to 5 or working?
Yeah, very much so. But it's not boring. It's essential. I'm 68 years of age, but I always say to people, as a person, I'm happy to be 68 as long as I'm reasonably healthy. But as a songwriter, I'm still that 21-year-old hustling. And remember, I sit at a piano when I was 19, 16, 17 in a garden shed with a piano. It wasn't a cassette in front of me or digital recorders. It was tape reel to reel. So nothing has really changed other than that element. I moved from reel to reel to cassettes. I went to digital, and I've come back to cassettes. Like Diane Warren, she, like me, likes to use cassettes. You stick a cassette in the player on top of your piano, come up with a tune, press the cassette recorder, record it, then move on and try and come up with something else. So that process is fantastic. I love it.
You also, when you talk about keeping up with pop music,
yeah, listen to everything.
Yeah. Are you ever tempted to write for other people?
No, I write for myself. I'm pretty hard to please. I mean, of course, I've tried. I remember, in '68 when Bonnie and Clyde came out, and I went home and tried to write a song about Bonnie and Clyde. I couldn't do it. And people have said to me, would you write for other people? It's nice when other people do your songs, but they're just written for me. I mean, the covers I've had, the most recent cover now is Diana Krall and Michael Bublé. I mean, it's magical. And I have a Japanese rock band version of Alone Again. They're like Metallica. It just goes at 200 miles an hour, and it's unbelievable. So there's lots of things. We had one in Belgium with Claire a couple of years ago, which was a huge success. So all those kind of things going on are really a nice compliment to me as a songwriter.
But you like to sing your own songs.
Well, somebody has to.
All right. Thank you very much, Gilbert O'Sullivan, for coming on Needle Time.
What's in a kiss? Have you ever wondered just what it is? More perhaps than just a moment of bliss. Tell me what's in a kiss. What's in a dream? Is it all the things you'd like to have been? All the places that you haven't yet seen? Tell me what's in a dream. I know it's really rather stupid of me, but I honestly don't know. Every time I try to find a solution, I'm surprised at how quickly I become so slow. What's in a kiss? Have you ever wondered just what it is? More perhaps than just one moment of bliss. Tell me what's in a kiss. Anytime you need a light refreshment, baby, you can count on me. I am your very own delicatessen, well equipped to supply you with your every need. What's in a kiss? Have you ever wondered just what it is? More perhaps than just one moment of bliss. Tell me what's in a kiss. Tell me what's in a kiss. Tell me what's in a kiss.